Well, hello, everyone. Hey, I'm Heather Moran, and I'm the CEO here at 6th and I. And whether you're here with us in person or watching virtually from home, thank you so much for being here with us this afternoon. Now, anyone who's here for the first time, 6th and I is a nonprofit center for arts, entertainment, ideas, and Jewish life. And by attending our programs, you help fuel our mission to inspire more meaningful and fulfilling lives. So thank you. Speaking of inspiring, it is my sincere honor to introduce Governor Gretchen Whitmer. And we are here celebrating the release of the young adult edition of her memoir, True Gretch: Lessons for Anyone Who Wants to Make a Difference. Governor Whitmer is a long-life Michigander who first ran for office when she was 29 years old. She never lost an election, except for an especially close one in 5th grade for class secretary. So for the young people here today, if at first you don't succeed, you keep at it. This book shares a vivid look into how Governor Whitmer went from being a gutsy kid to a trailblazing leader, and introduces you to the people and the principles that have long grounded her leadership. Whether navigating a polar vortex or a global pandemic, Governor Whitmer shows up as the leader people want in times of crisis: pragmatic, clear, tireless, and committed to finding common ground. What's so clear is that whether she's on a campaign stage or hanging out at home, Governor Whitmer's constant qualities are humor, heart, humility, and as some of us Jews like to say, chutzpah. Governor Whitmer has had nicknames all throughout her life, like Gravity Gretchen when she was a kid, or more recently, Big Gretch, the name of a song about her by the rapper G-Mac Cash. Someone, I actually can't remember who, once called her that woman from Michigan. It was meant as an insult, but Governor Whitmer owned it and made it her own, one of the many excellent lessons in her book. It turned out to be good for her and good for Michigan's Etsy community, because the phrase is still being sold on stickers, mugs, and t-shirts. Governor Whitmer will be in conversation tonight with Tisch Sussman, the creator and host of the award-winning podcast, She Pivots. On the show, Emily shares stories of women who have successfully pivoted in their personal and professional lives and turned challenges into formative opportunities. Emily is also co-owner of Gotham FC professional women's soccer team and the New York Giants. Yep. She's a Tony-nominated producer and a mother of 3. Thank you all again for joining us, and please help me give Governor Gretchen Whitmer and Tisch Sussman a warm welcome to 6th and I.
Thank you. Wow. Beautiful.
Oh my God. Welcome, Governor, to DC.
Thank you. It's good to be here. The good people of DC. Oh, and a Lions fan there. Nice to see you. All right.
Yeah, I have the feeling we have more than one Lions fan in the room here, or at least big Gretch fans for sure. Okay, so we're going to back it up. We're going to jump right in, but let's back it up. Little Gretch, give me little Gretch. What did you want to be when you grew up?
Little Gretch wanted to be a sports broadcaster, actually.
Oh, we could have met in another life, actually.
That would have been fun. But I'm glad to be here with you now. You know, when I went to Michigan State, I thought I was going to be a sports broadcaster. All right, go green, go white, I heard someone. And I see you go blue people out there, too. It's fine. And I went to Michigan State. It was right down the street from the state capitol. And my dad, who saw that I was taking all my communications classes and a couple of electives like bowling, suggested that I do an internship down at the Capitol. And one of the things he said was, there are so few people, and I think it's really true today, even more today, so few people understand how state government works or how government works, right? Civics.
Yes.
And he said, go down and do an internship at the Capitol, and maybe you hate it, maybe you love it, but you'll come away understanding state government better, and it'll carry you into wherever you go, put you on stronger footing. And I fell in love with public policy, and that's kind of when I pivoted.
An early pivot. Do you think that you use anything from that early sports journalism passion in the work that you do today?
Oh, that's a good question.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think team sports is really a great way, especially for women, to learn about leadership and teamwork and how to take a loss and dust yourself off.
Yeah.
And so definitely the sports background, I think, informs a lot of how I show up today. Yeah.
Well, since I'm now dying to wade into this Michigan State, University of Michigan, I will tell you both my mother went to UM and my grandparents met there.
Wow.
So we actually have some deep Michigan ties,
I
not
love
just
that.
on this side.
You ask a couple questions, everyone's got some link back to Michigan, I think.
Yeah.
I am a Spartan who spawned Wolverines, so one of my daughters is right there, and she's graduating in a few months from University of Michigan. So,
Look, nothing creates unity like a good rivalry. So we're going to get the audience up here in any minute.
yeah, I mean, how was that basketball game the other night, Sydney?
So once you decided politics, I mean, you did the internship, you got into it. Was that it? You said, okay, now I'm in? Or did you ever even consider anything else at that point?
You know, I fell in love with it because I saw the difference. So I was, as a junior staffer, you do the hard work of the constituent work. And so I learned so much about the people of Michigan who were reaching into state government, who needed help with this or that. And I was someone who was able to help connect people at times or give them, information that they were seeking. And it was really about people. It's why I love this work, even on the hardest day. And Lord knows I've had more than my share of hard days in this job the last 7 years. But even on the hardest day, I get joy out of knowing that I'm helping people or I'm doing something that makes a difference in people's lives. So that part of the job I really love. And I learned that early on, that was public service. That's what it's all about.
Yeah. You had an early formative experience at the beginning of it, something that so many people of our generation are dealing with, the sandwich generation, of caring for your mother, your newborn, and in a new job all at the same time. I mean, what were your coping mechanisms and what was your decision-making look like at that point?
So, in the year 2000, I was running for the State House. It was the first office that I had run for. I was elected, got married, and my mother had fallen ill with glioblastoma multiforme, which is the worst kind of brain cancer you can get. And she was told she'd have maybe 4 to 6 months to live. I was pregnant with my first child and a new member of the Michigan legislature. They say the 5 hardest things that you'll do in the course of your life is have a child, the death of a loved one, a new job, moving your home. All of these things happened to me in that first year I was in the legislature. And yet, I think I learned that during that period of time really forged who I am today. I have no patience for BS. And I don't have time to try to be something I'm not. I don't have the energy or time to do that. And so it's helped me show up, I think, as I am. And certainly a lot of women who came before me made that easier for me and women in my generation to be our authentic selves and to feel like we can show up as we are. But I think, I often talk in sports analogies now, you know why. But, instead of looking at the 100 yards down the field, looking at the next 10. And I think that's how I managed through that time. What do I need to do today or this week or this month to get through all of the pressures that I'm navigating as a member of the sandwich generation and new legislator? Yeah.
Otherwise, it would just feel overwhelming.
Yeah. I mean, when you think about where am I going to be, how do I get that full 100 yards? And you should always have a plan, but you got to focus on the now. And you can take small bites, and that's the easiest way to do it. And I think I definitely tapped into that skill throughout the pandemic, especially when everything felt so overwhelming. but to do the next right thing. And I talk a little bit about doing the next right thing in the book.
Oh, don't worry, we're definitely going to get to the pandemic. That topic we will cover. So a large part of this show and the way we tell stories is the intersection of the personal and professional. So trying to open up how these personal things that happen in our lives end up impacting our professional decision making. So at that time, how did your version of success change, or was it the same?
Yeah, it's interesting. When people often ask, when you had kids, did your opinions change? Did you change your values at all? And I would say, no, not at all. My patience did. I have zero patience for baloney, because I don't have time to wait for someone else to fix an issue. I want to do it because I think about the world that my kids are growing up in and that people their age are growing up in. And so as I think about how we are navigating, the chaos today or the crises of the last few years, centering on that is what helps me stay true to who I am and why I'm doing this job, but also to keep me grounded. And nothing keeps you more grounded than kids who do not think you're cool, even when other people might.
I mean, impressive that you even got her to come with you.
I know. I begged her. We were at the White House for dinner last night, so she was my date. And I begged her to come, right?
Care to elaborate on that dinner?
No.
We'll leave it at that. You went on to become the first woman to be chosen as Senate Minority Leader in your state's history. Were there moments during that time that you thought, there must have been, where you're like, okay, I'm super good at this. Like, I'm nailing this. Like, what were those moments for you?
When I felt like I was nailing it?
Yes. You're like, I am amazing at being the state Senate Majority Leader.
Never. I remember my mom, who I talk a lot about in the book, she was really a glass ceiling breaker. She was this blonde, blue-eyed, little woman with this big personality, this large laugh. She just exuded such confidence, and she wrote all the book awards in her year. She graduated law school while she was raising us three. She was just this powerhouse of a person. And I'll never forget her telling me that sometimes she was, as one of the top people in the Attorney General's office in Michigan, she sometimes would sit there and think, I wonder if they're going to figure out that I'm not supposed to belong here. That kind of imposter syndrome thing that I think we all feel at certain points in time.
I feel it right now, just for the record.
We don't come out of the womb thinking that we deserve to be, the leader of the free world, right? We all put these criteria on ourselves, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. It keeps you humble, but it also, I think, is why never during the time did I still marvel when people are like, governor, it's just, I feel really lucky to be where I'm at, and I know I'm not better than anyone else, and I talk a little bit about my dad. When I first got elected, he did an interview, and he said, Gretchen knows she's not special. And I saw that in print, and I thought, oh my God, people must think my dad hates me or something. Or I have really low self-esteem, but he raised us so that we didn't think we were better than anyone else. That's what he meant, and we don't. And I think I never felt like, okay, I'm really killing it. I saw a job that needed to be done. I didn't see anyone stepping forward who wanted to take it on or who was going to be able to jump in and do what I thought needed to be done. So like a lot of women, I think I just rolled up my sleeves and said, all right, there's a job that needs to be done. I'm going to do it.
Yeah, I do want to ask about your decision to run for governor at the time that you did, because you had passed on it in 2014, right? Yep, 2014. Mm-hmm. And then you decided to run. So what was that timing decision for you? And again, what was your decision-making process?
Well, in 2014, I was in the state Senate, and some had asked if I might consider running for governor, and it just wasn't the right time for me. I was already the Senate minority leader. I have 2 little kids at home. I was divorced at that time, and I knew that it wasn't the right time. I had a big job, and I wanted to stay focused on that. I left the legislature in 2016. We have term limits in Michigan. I served 3 2-year terms in the House and then 2 4-year terms in the Senate. And I was term limited out. It's lifetime ban, so you can't go back. And I really thought I was going to go into the private sector, and I taught both at the University of Michigan and Michigan State, which tells you I can bridge some divides, right?
The biggest, some would say.
The biggest divide. And the Flint water crisis became public. What had happened in Flint, decisions of government that had catastrophic impacts on people. And I was looking at the field of folks that were considering running, and I thought, none of them have been in state government. I know how to do this, and this needs to be fixed. And so that's really kind of what inspired me to run. But then Donald Trump won the state of Michigan in 2016, and I looked, I couldn't believe that my state played a pivotal role in that. And I thought, I got to get organized. I got to get out into the state and talk to people and find out what's on their minds, because it just was so hard to believe at the time. Here we are. And,
Still hard to believe.
And so I got all across Michigan. Michigan's a big state. All right, I'm going to get out my Michigan map. You ready? Okay. So Michigan is 2 hands, and this is the lower peninsula, this is the upper peninsula. I know people in in Ohio who don't realize we have an upper peninsula. It's not Canada, the 51st state. It's still a part of Michigan.
Okay, so I see we're really writing off Ohio.
Anyway,
just for the record. Okay.
No, I'm just kidding. But when you're in Lansing, Michigan, the state capital, you're as close to Washington, D.C. as you are to the western end of the upper peninsula.
Oh, that's crazy.
It's a big state. And so I figured I just got to get across the state and talk to people. And so my favorite thing to ask people was, if I'm fortunate enough to get elected governor, what could I do that'll make your life better? And the thing is, when you ask people, they'll tell you.
Yeah.
You just got to listen. I don't think enough people do that, not just in political life, but anywhere. And over and over again, people would say, I need you to fix the damn roads. Whether I was in the Upper Peninsula or downtown Detroit or on the west side, that was the refrain. And I'd heard it over and over again, and so I started talking about the roads that way, and we're still working on fixing the damn roads in Michigan. But it was a conversation with a woman from Flint, I'm talking about Flint again. I met her at the Detroit Children's Hospital. And, I was there, and it's awkward to be a politician in a place where people don't expect you, and I wasn't sure if people would want to talk to me at all, but this woman seemed, friendly, and so I said, I got to ask you a question. So I asked her my question. If I'm fortunate enough to get elected, what could I do that'll make your life better? And she looked me in the eye and she said, I just need you to fix the damn roads. And I was taken aback a little bit, like, we're in a children's hospital. I thought we were going to talk about health care or child care or education. So I said, okay, tell me more. I wanted to find out, why is this the #1 issue for you? And she explained, she's 3 kids driving back and forth from Detroit and Flint to see her one child in the hospital, hit a pothole, it damaged the rim on her car, it took her off the road for a whole day, took a ton of money out of her rent and child care that she wasn't planning to spend fixing her car. She missed the day with her son in Detroit, had to pay for child care for the others who were at home. And so that was for me, crystallized why the fundamentals are the most important thing, because anyone who's on the margin gets failed if they can't drink the water coming out of their tap, or they have to be sidelined for a day because their car's not working, or have to find a new school or a tutor for a child if the schools aren't working. And that's why the fundamentals, the kitchen table issues, is what I've tried to stay focused on. And that's what I learned from the people of Michigan, getting all across the state and asking that question.
Well, do you think that concept of fix the damn roads, how did you have success with that as a fundamental? I mean, to your point, we still need to fix the roads. Something that I think that Democrats have really struggled with is owning success in a way they can talk about it. How have you been able to own that success when, to everyone's acknowledgement, there's still more work to be done?
Yeah. So I ended up having to do a bond so that we could keep fixing roads. I'm still working on getting my legislature to help me get a real long-term plan over the finish line. The thing about roads is that you have billboards everywhere because they're called orange barrels. And so when you're fixing roads, people see the orange barrels and they know that the work is being done. And that helps kind of advertise itself. But to your point about Democrats failing on the messaging front, I think that that's one of the big takeaways from this last cycle. And I think that that's getting away from taking ownership of the things that we did get done, I think was a real, we did a lousy job of that in this last cycle.
Yeah. We can give that a moment.
I mean, you can clap for that, I guess.
We can clap for that. I think that's a great point. How do you think it could have been done differently?
You can't tell people how to feel, and so I think around the economy, we can't tell people, okay, look at what's going on in the market. Look at how much better our inflation is than European countries. That doesn't fix the problem that people are having when they see their prices up. And guess what? Prices are still up, everybody, right? I know we're talking about Greenland, but we should still be talking about groceries because that's where the rubber hits the road. And so it appears that there's a disconnect between what people are really feeling and need and how we're talking about it. It's not that we have to change our values. It's not that we have to change, what we have been able to do, but how we've talked about it has been completely missing the mark. And I think it's being disconnected from people and spending time with real people and asking them, what's going on in your life? What can I do that'll make your life better? Yeah. And then doing it.
Right. Okay, so I promised that we were going to come back to 2020 as a moment. So the show is all about pivoting, meeting the moment where you are, how you change, what changes in yourself to rise to that occasion and adapt in that moment. 2020 was a real year for you. So can you tell us about your mindset, like how you worked through it, how your work shifted through the ups and, quite frankly, mostly downs of 2020?
Remind me, what happened in 2020? When I had my kids, they're like 18 months apart, and when I realized, oh my gosh, one's going to graduate in 2020, and the other's going to be the class of 2021, what great classes to graduate. Literally the worst two classes to graduate from high school for their whole generation. As the pandemic hit Michigan, we were one of the earlier places. Detroit, New York, Chicago, and New Orleans were kind of the hot spots for a long time. Had just incredible amount of loss of life, overwhelmed hospitals. It was really, really hard. And I know none of us wants to relive it, but just to kind of remember what was happening, we had refrigerated trucks outside of our hospitals because there were so many corpses, people that had lost the battle to COVID that couldn't be buried or cremated right away, but had to be refrigerated. It was awful, and it was really challenging because we did not have help at the federal level, and navigating that was, I think, one of the, trying to do the right thing for people. That's why I do this work. I love people. My instinct always is to run to where the problem is and to see how can I help. And that's the worst thing you could do in a pandemic because you just add to the problem. You have to let the experts do the work, but give them the supplies that they need. And we were really struggling to do that. And I remember we were on a call with the White House, and we were told to go find all the supplies ourselves. And I went on television and I said, I'm not getting the supplies I need from the federal government. There's no federal strategy here. And I need masks for my doctors and gloves and et cetera, nurses, respiratory therapists. I made someone really unhappy with my observations, but we started getting help. People were reaching in and starting to help. And so it was worth it. But I think it was just one of those moments where every time I saw a tweet or me getting singled out, my heart sank, not because it hurt my feelings, but because I was worried that it would impede my ability to get assistance for the people of Michigan, and that was all I cared about.
Yeah. Will you, now that, again, we are right back here, will you approach the relationship with the federal government differently now?
Well, I stand by what I did. I don't regret what I did. If I could go back in time with the knowledge I have now, would I and any governor have done some things different? Of course. But I was fighting for the people of Michigan, and I'm never going to apologize for that. That's my job. When it comes to the moment that we're in now, I'm going to be the governor of Michigan for the next 2 years. The state of Michigan elected the president again. They elected me again, and if I can find common ground on things, I'm going to try to do that. But I'm also not going to shy away from fights that matter when I need to. That's my job as Michigan governor.
You did elicit quite a response in that moment, not just on the federal side, but within Michigan. Do you remember, I imagine you do remember, what was going through your head at that moment as you looked outside your office in the Capitol, you saw there were protesters, and they began to storm into the Michigan State Capitol?
Yeah, so there was this group that came together during the pandemic who were mad that, I had told them to wear masks and that we were trying to keep people safe, and they created this group called Project Gridlock, bankrolled by the DeVos family in Michigan, by the way. And I was down at my office in the Romney building, and sitting there, the state capitol was across the street, and I was giving my press conference, which we did 2 or 3 times a week, depending on what was happening. And the protesters didn't know that I was in the building. So my office is not actually in the Capitol, it's across the street. But I think most people think that the office is in the Capitol. And so I could stand in the window, 1 floor away from people, and what I saw was really shocking. I knew that there was going to be a protest. We weren't trying to stop the protest. We said, just wear a mask, stay 6 feet apart, you have the right to protest. But when I looked out the window, people had showed up with Confederate flags and Nazi, symbols. There were signs that said Heil Whitmer, and there was a dark-haired Barbie hanging from a noose, and it was really stunning. It took my breath away. There's a picture in the book I took with my phone from the window that said, let's see, it said something like, Gretchen Whitmer is the reason we need the Second Amendment. And this was the stuff that I saw from my office window. And I remember taking the picture and looking and seeing this so clearly, and then realizing, oh my God, I better get out of this window. Like, hello. They had their guns, and so it was one of those moments. I'd taken all these pictures, I was looking, and then I thought, what am I doing? Yeah. And then went down and gave my press conference. But it's, we saw the capital of Michigan get overtaken by protesters with guns before January 6th happened here. And I remember watching January 6th, and everyone said, how could this happen? We're so surprised. And I'm like, well, yeah, this happened here about 9 months beforehand. So I think the rhetoric and the willingness of leaders to encourage people to take up arms and threaten their fellow Americans is so dangerous. And that's why when Donald Trump was shot in Pennsylvania, I put a statement out right away because it's not okay no matter who the victim is.
Right. I think there's a lot to be learned from in this moment. I mean, when you came into the governor's office, Republicans held both houses, and yet you still pushed through and forged on. How do your objectives change if you're in that moment? How does your strategy change if you're in that moment? Like, what is potentially applicable to us now?
That's a good question. So, my first term, it was completely Republican-controlled House and Senate. In my second term, I won by almost 11 points, and we flipped both the House and Senate for the first time in 40 years, which was amazing. So while I was in the legislature, it was all Republican-controlled. Then as governor, it was Republican legislature, Democratic governor. Then it was all Democratic-controlled. Now we're back to 50-50. The House is Republican-controlled, the Senate is Democratic-controlled. And I think part of being, that woman from Michigan is, Michigan is a state that is always in the national eye during our presidentials because we are the most diverse swing state in the country. We go back and forth. We have this tendency to do that. And I think that's not a bad thing because it forces you to make a seat at the table and try to hammer things out. But now that we've got fairly drawn districts, it will continue to go back and forth instead of being one party controlled at the state level for so long. My strategy in this situation, similar to how it was with Democrats in all control and Republicans in all control, is to continue to host the quadrant leaders coming together, try to find common ground, pull people in, and build bridges. I've loved it. The Mackinac Bridge is the symbol of my campaign. It stretches between the two peninsulas, right? 5 miles long, suspension bridge, was the longest built at the time. And I think, I'm proud that my focus is building bridges, not walls. We want to create opportunity, connect people, and I'm always going to come at any problem with that mindset.
You've said that to be a successful politician, you need to have a thick skin and a short memory, and you tell a great anecdote about sending cake with a bat to someone who had made some disparaging comments. I really prefer a long grudge hold myself. How can I overcome that? Like,
it's a blessing to have a short memory in this business. Everyone in my family seems to, we do our thing and then we move on, and that's been helpful. The worst thing is a politician with a long memory and thin skin, because they're always out for retribution or looking for a battle. So I'm not sure how to help you cultivate thicker skin, but I'll think on that, Emily.
Yeah. Oh no, I have thick skin but a long memory. So I'll
That's
come
not a
back.
bad thing, though.
I'll come back when you're least expecting it.
Well, they say bury the hatchet, but keep the handle sticking up, right?
Love that. Love that. We were just talking about this backstage that, people keep coming up and saying, what do we do? Like, how do we stay optimistic? What should we be doing? How are you staying optimistic in this moment?
Well, and I confessed to you in the back, it's hard. After the election, I think a lot of people wanted to turn the TV off for a while and escape it. I hunkered down in December in Lansing. We had a lot of snow, and my family was all around, and I might have watched a few seasons of Dexter. It got to a point where my kids were like, "Are you okay?"
Are you onto this season's Traitors yet?
No.
Oh,
but
for
I've
the
heard
next
it's
one.
great.
Yeah, for the next one.
But, one of the things I know about myself is if I isolate, I get more anxious. I need to be doing something. I need to feel like I'm doing something that matters. And I was on a flight the other day, and the flight attendant came up, and she said, "I'm so worried, and I'm talking to my therapist. What can I do?" And I said, "Well, my advice is to find something that you can do in your community. We can make a difference, whether it's a small thing." I'm watching some of these town halls in Georgia. People are speaking out. It's making a difference. Yeah. And if it's volunteering at your, at a women's health clinic, or it is simply helping, people who need, some help reading to kids, or visiting with, people who don't get visitors. I mean, I think that there's ways that each of us can do something right now that will help us feel like we're making a little bit of a difference, will keep us activated and wear us out so we go to bed tired.
I was sharing with you that I live in a Republican district, and my member of Congress isn't holding town halls. So we have to get a little more creative that way.
Yep. But I believe you can.
I appreciate that. He'll come back eventually, and I won't forget.
She has a long memory.
You know, the chasm feels so large between the parties right now, and I actually feel in some ways it's less about political affiliation and more about information versus non-information. As someone who won in double digits in 2022, how did you break through to those people? Like, how do you obviously won over people who are more than just democratically affiliated. How do you break through when there's not a clear information path right now?
We've been really analyzing how people get their information, and we've kind of reconfigured all of our efforts toward information dissemination. One of the things that we do is, someone asked me, do you think of yourself as an influencer? Because we've got like a great social media game, I think. It's not me bragging because it is not me. I don't even know the passwords, trust me. I just do what the young people on the staff suggest, and most times it hits, sometimes it's a miss, but I think that it's important to meet people where they are, and I think podcasts are really important. I think that non-traditional ways to reach people is the way that we can cut through a lot of the noise, but it's very challenging. There's so much misinformation out there. There's so many, I think, companies and interests that are keen on redirecting people into places where they don't intend to be or aren't really looking for. And so we've gotten really creative. We've been, I think, relentless about getting our message out and creative. Big Gretch was a nickname that I got during the pandemic. I'm named after both my grandmothers, Gretchen and Esther. Grandma Gretchen always said, never let anyone call you Gretch. Gretch rhymes with wretch, and that ain't pretty. And so I always had this aversion. If you called me Gretch, ugh. And I don't know many women who like the big on the front of their nickname, right? So I was in the office. We were getting ready to do one of my press conferences during the pandemic, and someone said, "Do you know this Big Gretch thing that everyone's calling you in Detroit?" I'm like, "Huh?" And I said, "What does this mean?" And so this woman on my staff, Shaquila Myers, who I've worked most of the last 25 years with her, she's like, "No, Governor, you don't understand. Big Gretch, it's trending in Detroit. It's your new nickname that Detroiters have given you, and it's like they've given you the key to the city. You've got the nickname." And then this rap came out. But so Big Gretch became this thing, and it's hilarious. And now it's my favorite nickname, which most of my family members are like, "I cannot believe that this is your favorite nickname now, Big Gretch." But during before the Barbie movie came out, this woman on my team, who's young and creative and brilliant, said, "Let's grab a Barbie. We'll grab the America Ferrera Barbie and give her a haircut like yours, and we'll call her Lil Gretch." And I mean, we got awards for this campaign. It's the wildest thing. Lil Gretch in her pink GM Corvette made in Detroit with little pink traffic cones fixing the damn roads, giving a speech at a little podium that Julia whittled. She whittled a little podium for Lil Gretch to give a speech at. But we call it like giving people their vegetables with the little fun social media. Yeah. So we talked about the budget with a Barbie, and like people saw it and they learned something at the same time. So, I'm not cool. And like I said, I don't know the passwords, but I got a phenomenal team and I trust them. And 99 out of 100 times it's great. And every once in a while I get totally roasted because I did something cringe, right, honey?
We got a big nod on that one.
Thank you.
By the way, I love the fact that someone asked if you're an influencer, and you're like, I'm the governor? Look, but this new form of media of meeting people where they are, people are choosing what they consume. That's what I think the hardest part of it is, that you have to actually get in front of them when they're choosing similar forms of media. That's what I think the hardest part is. So I feel like most of the conversations of, I guess what we'll call like the persuadables or uninformed or differently informed, I guess is a term we can use now, but it'll end up happening with people that are close to us.
Yeah.
Like it's a face-to-face conversation. It's family, it's dinner table. Like we really got to get in there. How do we, give us advice. Like how do we have those conversations right now without just a massive eye roll and say, I don't know where you're getting your information from?
I think it starts with asking the question. I really do think that listening is a superpower. And it's really important no matter what walk of life, but especially important if you're going to be a public servant. Your job is to represent the people. How can you do that if you don't know what they're thinking, what's on their minds, what's standing between them and whatever goal they have or need that isn't yet met? And so even with people who are on the other side of the aisle, if you can connect on something, by showing some genuine interest in them, it opens up a possibility for common ground that you can build off of. And it sounds maybe sophomoric to be that simple, but I think that's a good start. My goal, of course, is to find common ground on my side of the fence, right? Come on over, but you can't be persuasive if you don't have credibility, and you can't have credibility if you don't have something to start from.
Yeah. Well, I think this question of what is authentic for women in power, and it's not just in politics, it's across the board, that what is authentic is really challenging. And I think we're still unpacking it. I'm actually so glad that I saw Jennifer Palmieri here, because what she said to me after 2016, we were in the office one day, and she said that it was too hard for voters to find Hillary what they considered authentic, because she had spent her entire life being qualified to be at that table and proving that she was qualified to be at the table. So I think that she, in many ways, broke that glass ceiling for many of us, of the generation of women who had to come up in a different kind of environment. And I think it gave Vice President Harris an opportunity to be a different kind of world leader. But I think it's still evolving. I think we still don't know what it means. So, this version of this book is specifically for young women, for young men, for young adults. And you talk about being authentic. And you are very authentic in this book. You really give us some great stuff in there. But how do you think that we can both honor that part of ourselves that feels authentic, but lead and be chosen to lead in this moment where we're still not 100% there?
We're not. We've come a long way though, and I'm always very mindful that the only reason I can show up as I am is because there are so many women who walked through this fire before me and made it easier for me. I think about Hillary Clinton. I think about Jennifer Granholm was our first female governor in the state of Michigan, and she wrote, I think in one of her books, or maybe it was just an interview that I read, but about how she didn't say this, but I'll say it. She's a very attractive woman.
Yeah.
And she always felt like she needed to wear her hair very short and wear pantsuits, to be taken seriously. And you know what? I show up in a leather jacket now, and I can show up and talk like a normal person, not have to have everything feel like it's absolutely perfect and sanitized the way that Hillary Clinton had to just to have some credibility in a room. Yeah. So I feel really lucky that I can show up that way. I still have to worry about things that my male counterparts don't. I still give a State of the State speech, and people talk more about the dress that I wore than the words that I uttered, and that's maddening. But I'm I'm mindful that when I own my space, it makes it easier for other women to do that too. We saw that in the pandemic with my Secretary of State, who was under the gun with all of the pressures around the election, my Attorney General, who was in court battling on all of our behalves every day. We're all women, and when each of us took heat, it made it easier for the other to stand in the breach. And I think that that's something that, as I think about how I show up and the women who are coming in or might think about going into this work, I hope that I'm making it easier for them to show up as they are and to be their authentic selves. Because, gosh, if we have not learned anything over the last 10 years, it's that people, for whatever reason, need to see something real that they feel like lots of politicians don't give them. Yeah. And showing up as you are is the most powerful thing, I think. And frankly, who's got energy to be something you're not anymore?
It sounds exhausting.
It is.
This book is the young adult version of your book. Why a young adult version, and why now? What are you hoping to deliver to this audience that was different than the first edition?
So when I wrote the first book, one of the things that happened as I was kind of getting around talking about it was people would tell me I bought copies for my kids or my grandkids. It's a quick read. It's 10 chapters, short vignettes, but real, and humor, but also lessons that have helped keep me positive. When I ran for re-election, after a pandemic, after a plot to kidnap and kill me, after demonstrations for racial justice in the wake of George Floyd's murder, and the incredible crises, of flooding and polar vortex, all the things, 32 recall attempts. I was counting that one.
Memory not so short on that one, huh?
Heavy stuff, people would understandably say, why do you want to run again? And why do you still feel optimistic? And so I wrote that book to put some light out into the world. I knew the presidential election year would be hard. That's why the timing. But when people said I bought this for my kids, I thought, maybe we can do one that is geared toward young people. So this book's a little bit different. It's not vastly different. I still have the real stories that I shared about some of my bad choices in life, some of my embarrassing moments. It's all still in there. But we added some more stories from my youth, like losing my first election when I ran for secretary in 5th grade. There's a Q&A at the end of the book with my daughters that is fun and funny and I think good for young people to be able to see. And there's a bunch of resources in the back of the book for young people if they're dealing with mental health crisis or sexual assault, or a variety of resources so that young people can access the help they need. And then there's just a little special thing. A shark is embossed on the front of the cover because they like to put those little hidden things in for the young adult version. So there's some fun things in this version, and we wanted to gear it for young people.
So this is a question I ask of all of my guests. What is something that, it can be something we discussed, or it can be something different. What is something that at the time you thought was really a negative, but now you see it as having really launched you to who you are now?
One of the people that I sought for counseling over my life said this, and I talk about it in the book, but every one of us is like a ball of clay. And over our lifetimes, things will get taken away from us. No fault of our own in many occasions, but something will be taken away. And I think about that a lot whenever there's a hardship or something that I'm struggling with. And that every one of those things, sometimes a ball that's been hollowed up can become a cup. And so it has purpose. And so every hardship can give you purpose. And I think about that a lot. I gave a speech on the Senate floor and revealed that I had been raped when I was in college. And I had never shared that publicly. And I knew sharing it probably wasn't even going to change the outcome of the legislation that was before us, but I felt like it was important for women who'd been shut out of the conversation. There was no ability to testify on bills, I felt like I needed to put a face to who was going to be impacted by this. And I shared that, and sure enough, it didn't change a vote. I lost. I went home really depressed. I had to call my dad on the way home to tell him this because I'd never told him, and this was going to be in the press. I knew it would be in the press. And, I felt really horrible the next day. Like, why did I do this? But then I got into the office, and I heard from so many people who had also gone through an assault like that, or knew someone, or thanked me, or shared their story with me. And I realized that pain that I had purpose. And now I've been able to tell that story, and we've been able to, in Michigan, codify women's reproductive rights. 10 years. And so that was kind of a big one, but it was something that happened that was taken away. It took a long time, 20 years for me to be able to talk about it. Now I talk about it without getting choked up, but it took a long time. And not every person who survived something like that can find their voice. And I was able to, and being able to use it has helped me find purpose in it.
Yeah.
And so I share that as something that was horrible, but now I think is something that gives me helps motivate who I am today.
Yeah, I love that. Do you think you'll pivot again, maybe to one particular thing?
Well, January 1 of 2027, I will be pivoting because we have term limits in Michigan. So I'll keep you posted on what's next.
Very fair. Now, before we get into the audience, so now we asked the audience for some questions, which we have, and we're gonna get into. As a point of personal privilege, I read the book on a snow day. So my kids are 8, 6, and 4, were home with me, wanted to know what I was reading. So first we read the chapter titles, and then we read some of the book. So my kids have some questions for you.
Okay.
I'll read them all. You can decide what you want to answer. When you were really young, did you let all the bullies get you down? Have you ever done anything embarrassing in public? Do you have any brothers or sisters? Have you ever met the president? Have you ever made a fire? What is your pivot, and why are you on this show? What is your favorite podcast? She better say Mommies. Have you ever been to the hospital for an unknown reason? Have you ever flown an airplane? Have any of your dogs ever died, and did you get another one? What school did you go to? What did you want to be when you were a little kid? Have you ever been ice skating on a little pond on your shoes? Have you ever jumped in a bucket of mud? I did that once. Take that as you like.
Was that your question, Evelyn?
One of my kids is here.
I love those questions. I can't remember any of them, though.
You can take the bucket of mud question.
I love the bucket of mud. I would love to jump in a bucket of mud.
That sounds like a great, we'll let your social people know.
Okay.
That sounds like a really good one. Okay, so I loved this. This is from, I believe, a Michigander. What is your proudest professional accomplishment as governor? P.S. Go Spartans. That's from Nathaniel.
All right. Thank you, Nathaniel. Go green. In this, after my reelection, when we had full Democratic control of the legislature, we did a lot of things that were long overdue. So to say one, is very difficult. But we codified women's reproductive rights. We were able to ensure all the kids in Michigan get free breakfast and lunch every day at school. We did $1 billion of tax relief for working families. Yeah. But I signed into law, finally getting Michigan on the right side of history, full civil rights protections for the LGBTQ plus community. Yeah. And my oldest daughter is a gay woman, and there's a very funny exchange in the book about that. I'll just tell you what it is. So I was getting ready to sign this legislation, and I texted my oldest daughter, and I said, Sherry, would you like to come to the press conference where I signed the bill, as a member of the community? And she's like, yeah, I'd love to, Mom. And so, I've never pressured my kids to do things. Right, Sydney? I've never pressured them, but I always invite them. But they're in charge. They get to make their own decisions. And so I said, would you like to come? She said, yes. I said, okay, how should I refer to you? Like as a gay woman or a member of the community? And we have a screenshot of our text message in the book, and she writes, member of the community, LOL, Gretchen. And I'm like, I'm sorry. She goes, I'm a gay woman, it's fine. Call me a gay woman. I'm like, okay, thank you. And she writes, you're welcome, non-community member. And I wrote, I prefer community ally. And she writes, you're ridiculous. But I put a screenshot of our text exchange in there. But I signed that bill with my daughter standing next to me, and that was one of my most proud moments. Yeah.
Beautiful. We have a question here from Alexandra. After the results of the 2016 and 2024 presidential elections and hearing discussions about 2028, I keep hearing that Democrats won't run a woman for a very long time. How do you avoid letting comments like this discourage you from doing the work when it seems like for a lot of this country, it'll never be enough?
Well, number one, that's BS. Okay? I've heard some people say that this election means America's just not ready for a woman chief executive. I think that's baloney. I really do. There were a lot of things that came to play in this election. And you know what? Kamala Harris ran a heck of a campaign, but it was so late. I'll just be honest. I think it was so late, and it's such a unique moment. And the candidate on the other side is a unique candidate. I mean, there are a lot of things at play here. I think anyone who says that it's because she was a woman is not paying attention and maybe has their own agenda, right? If you look at just what even happened in Michigan and Wisconsin, Tammy Baldwin got reelected. Alyssa Slotkin got elected.
Yeah.
So, we have seen in a state like Michigan, which is the swingiest of swing states, we've got all females at the top who are in all executive offices. This country is ready. I think these circumstances were really unique, and I'm sure we're going to have a lot of great candidates in 2028, and I think we will see more women rise up, and we will, in my lifetime, we are going to see a woman president.
Well, you'll be happy to know this morning when I was reading through the questions with Evelyn, since one of the questions that my kids had asked of you is, what did you want to be when you grew up? I said, what do you want to be when you grew up? And she goes, a president. And I was like, yes. And she might be. Here's a question from Grace. What is the best part of your job and what is the worst part of your job? / do you think the Detroit Lions will make it to the Super Bowl next year?
The best part of my job is every day is different, and I am with some incredibly talented people, and I get to see amazing things that are happening in Michigan that even if I have lived in the state my whole life, I'm still learning things about my own state, and I love that, and I think that I'm so lucky. The hardest part of my job, there's just so many people who are invested in benefiting from problems rather than solving them, and that gets really frustrating. Yeah. And yes, the Lions are going to win the Super Bowl next year.
Okay, I have to turn my phone over because your communications director just texted me from her vacation. Okay. This is from Andrew from Bethesda. If you had to choose one issue or problem that Democrats need to talk about more, what would it be? And are there any issues or problems that Democrats spend too much time talking about?
Okay, I'm not a pundit, and I'm never going to critique my fellow Democrats because I understand that we all have different roles, especially governors. That being said, I don't know that we've got to rebuild who we are and what we care about. I do think we got to talk about it better. We got to be better communicators and stay focused on the things that really move people and touch people and improve people's lives. You know, we are living in very chaotic times where there are so many things to be pulling our attention from, and they're not. I'm not saying they're not important, but we've got to be really, I think, thoughtful about what's going to matter to people most, and really be disciplined about having real solutions to what people are vexed with. It's not simple, it's not easy, and I think we're going to deal with a lot of chaos over the next days, weeks, and months. But there's a lot of work that we have yet to do.
Here's a question from Cassie. As a graduating high school senior who led high school outreach for youth for Harris Walls, I've seen firsthand both the excitement and the challenges of engaging young people in politics. What do you think are the most effective ways to not only get young people involved in civic engagement, but to ensure they stay engaged beyond elections?
I love that question. I would like to ask that back to the person that wrote the question, as a person who's, oh, hi, all right, let's.
Oh.
I mean, you're in it, you're doing it. One of the things that we saw in Michigan in 2022 was the highest youth voter turnout in the country was in the state of Michigan in 2022. It's part of how I won by 11 points. We also had abortion rights on the ballot. We had an energy that was out there, and I am mindful of how do we continue to harness this and keep this energy up. And it's challenging. Even in this last election, we saw it start to wane, and people said, is it because people think that the issue's settled? No, I think I'm not quite sure what the answer is to it, but I think you're going to have to be a part of helping us figure that out. So I'm pointing at you, but we're going to follow up, because I would love to know, how do we tap in? I'm always polling my own kids who are 21 and 22. You know, what's happening on campus? What do we need to be focused on? What are you most worried about? And it's the fundamentals, too, for 22-year-olds. It's, what's my next job going to be? How am I going to find an affordable place to live? How am I going to participate and be able to be successful in the economy? What the heck's going on with climate change? And what are you people going to do? Because it's still getting worse, and we're afraid. So I think that there's a lot there to learn. Yeah. But I think you've got to help us answer the question. So keep asking it, but then tell me what the answer is.
Well, here is a great last question. As many people feel that the federal government is no longer representing them, how can states and state governments respond?
Well, hey, I mean, you're seeing lawsuits getting filed. You're seeing state governors and legislatures taking action. We're working really hard to be creative and nimble, because there are so many things that are happening right now. But we're going to continue to do that. We saw it during the pandemic. It was the governors who gave people the information they needed to be safe, and worked so hard to help empower people. And that'll continue to be true. I'm very fortunate that I've got an attorney general who is doing great work on our behalf. I've got a cabinet that is continually assessing what we can do at the state level that lives up to our values and continues to deliver. And it means also using the platform that I have whenever it's important to take it on. Like I said, you know, I got to run a state. I've got to also make sure that we're delivering for people and able to make my case to the federal government, but also stand my ground when it matters. And that's what we're going to do today, tomorrow, and over the course of the next 4 years.
Maybe last night.
And last night, too.
Thank you so much, Governor Whitmer.
Thank you, Emily.
Thank you. Thank you, Six and I. Thank you for having us. Thank you. Wait, Governor Whitmer, could we take an audience selfie?
Yes, let's do it.
Thank you so much to
guys,
Governor Gretchen Whitmer and Emily Tisch Sussman. And thank you all for joining us. Please stay seated. While our guests make their way backstage, you can exit using the main lobby and both corner lobbies. All exits are on this level. Please do not go downstairs to exit. Autograph books are for sale in the main lobby. Thank you, and we hope to see you back here soon.